Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello guys, we are from group 6. We will present about Romanticism in era 1798 until 1837. We start and enjoy watching the video. Here a member of our group. So there are Feby Dwi Ambarwati, Amalia Fariza, Khumaira, Nurul, Savira, Lealy, Rizqianita, and Salsabila, Widya. Here I am Savira, Lealy, Rizqianita as first speaker. Will present about the first material. So the first material is romantic has come to mean basically two things. So first is the loving, and second a way of looking. The loving here it means that potentially loving relationship between man and woman, while a way of looking here, looking at the world that looks beyond or ignores the world as it is and perceive a visionary world. On this slide, Romanticism, the romantic movement. The romantic movement here, it means that there is a literary movement and profound shift in sensibility. So before it, in the 18th century, had been a time of enlightenment, of belief in reason, tradition, society, and science. Then, in the words of one critic, the French Revolution and Napoleon made a clean sweep. After them, it was no longer possible to think, act, or write as if the old form still had life. So, out of the smoke of the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution emerged a new approach to writing characterized by emotion over reason. In this romantic age, the individual person was valued over society, imagination was valued over logic, and the natural was valued over the artificial. So romantics found inspiration in nature, folk art, past, and their own passion. So it's a peer or literary movement and profound shift in sensibility which took place in Britain and throughout Europe roughly between 1770 and 1848. So on this slide there are four maybe character of romanticism. So the first is intellectually, and then politically, and then emotionally, and the last socially. Intellectually here, it marked a violent reaction to the Enlightenment, and then politically, it was inspired by the revolution in America and France, and then emotionally, it expressed an extreme assertion of the self and the value of individual experience, together with the sense of the infinitive and the transcendental. So the last is socially. Socially, it championed progressive causes to when these were frustrated, it produced a bitter, gloomy, and despairing outlook. So on the next slide, we'll present it by my best friend as second speaker, Amalia Fariza.
The Romantic Age began in 1798 when William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor published lyrical ballads, and ended in 1832 when Walter Scott died. So in here, imagination, emotion, and freedom are certainly the focal points of Romanticism. Romanticism stressed on self-expression and individual uniqueness. Next, What is included in Romanticism? A. Subjectivity and an emphasis on individualism. B. Spontaneity. C. Freedom from rules. D. Devotion is superior to beauty. E. Solitary life. F. Imagination is superior. K. Love of and worship of nature. A fascination with the past, especially the myth and mysticism of the Middle Age. Romanticism is characterized by the 5 I's. First, imagination. Second, idealism. Third, intuition. Fourth, inspiration. And last, individuality. This is the values and lifestyle of a romantic and was the essence of the time period. Art, music, and literature was inspired by this concept as they are influencing life today, the modern world as well. And this is characteristic of the Romantic era. First, common man and childhood over urban sophistication. Romantic belief in the natural goodness of human, which is hindered by the urban life, is civilization. They believe that the savage is noble, childhood is good, and the emotion inspired by what belief causes the heart to soar. Second, emotion over reason. Romantic belief that knowledge is gained through intuition rather than deduction. This is summed up by Wordsworth, who states that all good poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling, and truth nature over artificial. Romantics stress the awe of nature in art and language and the experience of sublimity through a connection with nature. Romantics reject the rationalization of nature by the previous thinker of the Enlightenment period. And for the individual over society, Romantic often elevates the achievement of the misunderstood heroic individual outcast, and the less imagination over logic. Romantics legitimize the individual imagination as a critical authority.
The next is common features of Romantic poetry. The Romantics cultivated imaginative freedom. Next, used a variety of poetic forms and then tended to express the feelings of men in solitude as opposite to those of men in society. All the poets, except Black, describe the natural environment. And the next is they tended to use language with more freedom and informality than the 18th century poets. Next, they were profoundly affected by the great historical fact of the French Revolution. And then the Romantic poets were deeply interested both in life and art. And the last is the most interesting poems were about writing poetry. Themes of Romantic, the first is nature, and then the next is love, and the last is history. And literary forms, the first is lyric, the second is ballad, next sonnet, historical, and novel. There are any romantic attitudes. The first is sensibility, and the second is melancholy, the third is individualism, and the last is rebelliousness. Three people in the first generation of Romantic poets. The first is William Blake, and the next is William Wordsworth, and the next is Taylor Coleridge. Let's move to the biodata of William Blake. William Blake, born on 28 November 1757 in London, England, and died on 12 August 1886 1827 in London, England, and the occupation is art poet, painter, and printmaker. And the genre is visionary poetry. Literary movement is Romanticism, and the last notable work are Song of Innocence and of Heaven and Hell, The Four Zones, Jerusalem, and Milton.
William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth was born on 7 April 1770, and he was died on 23 April 1850. William Wordsworth was one of the founders of English Romanticism and one of its most central figures and important intellects. He is best known for lyrical ballads, co-written with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and The Prelude, a romantic epic poem chronicling the growth of a poet's mind. Wordsworth was England's poet laureate from 1843 until his death in 1850. Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He was born on 21 October 1772 at Ottery, St. Mary, Devon, England, and he was died on 25 July at 1834. Samuel Taylor Coleridge was an English poet, literary critic, philosopher, and theologian who, with his friend William Wordsworth, was a founder of a romantic movement in England and a member of League Poets. He also shared volumes and collaborated with Charles Lamb, Robert Sweetie, and Charles Lloyd. He wrote the poems The Rime of the Ancient Mariner and Kubla Khan, as well as the major prose work Biographia Literaria. Well, and the next slide is about the second generation of Romantic poets, and they are Byron, 1757 until 1827 period, Keats, 1770 until 1850 period, and Percy Bysshe, 1792 until 1822 period. Percy Bysshe Shelley. He was born on 4 August 1792 in Field Place, Horsham, Sussex, England, and he was died on 8 July 1822. Percy Bysshe was one of the major English Romantic poets, widely regarded as one of the greatest lyric and philosophical poets in the English language. Shelley is best known for classic poems such as Ozymandias, Ode to the West Wind, To a Skylark, Music When Sophies Die, The Cloud, and The Mask of Anarchy. His other major works include a groundbreaking first drama and long, visionary, philosophical poems such as Queen Mab, widely considered his masterpiece, his lyrical drama, and his final unfinished work, The Germ of Life. John Keats. John Keats was born on 31 October 1795 in Moorgate, London, England, and he was died at 23 February 1892. John Keats was an English Romantic poet. He was one of the main figures of the second generation of Romantic poets, along with Lord Byron and Percy Bysshe Shelley. Despite his work having been in publication for only 4 years before his death from tuberculosis at the age of 25, although his poems were not generally well received by critics during his lifetime, his reputation grew after his death, and by the end of the 19th century, he had become one of the most beloved of all English poets. George Gordon Byron was born on 22 January 1788 and he was died at 19 April 1824, and known simply as Lord Byron. He was a British peer who was a poet and politician. He was one of the leading figures of the Romantic movement, and is regarded as one of the greatest British poets. He remains widely read and influential. Among his best-known works are the length narrative poems Don Juan and Childe Harold Pilgrimage. Many of his shorter lyrics in Hebrew melodies also became popular.
Okay, the next slide is about literary criticism. What is literary criticism? Literary criticism is the analysis of literary text through various lenses that highlight authorial stance, purpose, and perspective. The goal of literary criticism is always to help us understand and appreciate a work more fully, no matter what approach we use. There are two eras of literary criticism. They are traditional critical approach and newer approach to literary criticism. Let me explain more. Traditional critical approaches composed of three approaches. The first is historical biographical, the second is moral philosophical, and the third is formalistic criticism. Historical biographical approach sees a literary work as a reflection of the author's life and times, or life and times of the character in the work. Using this school of thought to investigate how plot details, settings, and character of work reflect or are representative of events, settings, and characters of the work reflect or representative of event. And then moral philosophical. This is approach that takes the position that the large function of literature is to teach morality and prove philosophical issues such as ethics, religion, or the nature of humanity. Literature is interpreted within the context of the philosophical thought of a period or group. And the last is formalistic critics. It assumes that everything necessary for analyzing the work is present in the work itself and discards any connection to possible outside influences such as the author's own life or historical times. This criticism considered what a work says and how it says it as inseparable issues. It focuses on close reading with sensitivity to the words and their various meanings. It searches for structures, patterns, imagery, and motifs, also figurative language, along with the juxtaposition of scenes, tone, and other literary techniques in order to come to a conclusion about the meaning of the work. And then newer approaches to literary criticism. They are physiological criticism, feminist or gender criticism, and the last is sociological or Marxist criticism. Physiological criticism is approach deals with the work of literature primarily as it is an expression in fictional form of the author's personality, mindset, feelings, and desires. It also requires that investigate the psychological of the characters and their motives in order to figure out the work's meanings. And then feminist. This approach asks us to use a wide variety of issues related to gender, concerning the author, the work itself, the reader, and the societies. And the last is sociological. This viewpoint considers particular aspects of the political content of the text, the author, the historical and socio-cultural context of the work. And then the figures of literary criticism are William Hazlitt, Carlos Lamb, Thomas De Quincey, and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Historical novel. Historical novel is a novel that has its setting a period of history and that attempts to convey the spirit, manners, and social condition of a past age with realistic detail and fidelity of the historical fact. The example of historical novels is Leo Tolstoy's Untitled War and Peace. The figures of historical novels are Robert Graves, Claudius, and Verves' 40 Days of Musadaf, and the third is Sir Walter, entitled Scott Worthley. Jane Austen and the Novel of Manner. This slide explains about Jane Austen and the Novel of Manner, and then the characteristics of this novel are the novel is dominated by the customs, manners, conventional behavior, and habits of particular social class, and then it often concerns with courtship and marriage, realistic and sometimes satiric, and then focus on domestic society rather than the larger world. Okay, that's all from us. We hope that it will be useful for all of us. Thank you for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.